Hello and welcome to this ICAEW webinar, Driving Compliance Excellence in e-invoicing, Key Strategies for Global Business Success, in association with Avalara. My name is Ed Saltmarsh and I'm the Technical Manager for VAT and Customs and Tax Faculty at ICAEW. I will be your facilitator for today's session. We encourage you to get involved with today's webinar. You can submit your questions to us at any time by typing a question into the Q&A widget at the bottom of your screen. We've allowed time at the end for questions, so please do keep them coming in throughout the webinar. Closed captioning is enabled for this webinar. To turn on this feature, click on the CC icon at the bottom of your screen. Please note the captions are automatically generated, so they may not be 100% accurate. A link to the slides will be shared in the chat box. Our speakers from Avalara today are Alton Fadil, VAT and e-invoicing sales leader for EMEA, and Matthew Harrison, senior VAT and e-invoicing sales executive. Alton is a highly experienced and results-oriented sales leader with a proven track record of success in the invoice automation, software as a service technology industry. He has over 15 years of experience with a deep understanding of the challenges and opportunities facing businesses in this space. Matt is one of Avalara's top VAT solution specialists with nearly 10 years experience within the tax space. Having worked as both a senior tax manager and a consultant, Matt has in-depth VAT knowledge twinned with a unique perspective to understand the impact tax changes have on businesses. And with that, it's over to you, Matt.
Great, thank you very much. So we'll just going to quickly take you through the agenda. So we'll just get up the slides. So we're just going to start with a brief overview of Avalara, because we're not sure how many of you know who we are. We're going to take you through some market dynamics and business issues and challenges that they generally face with e-invoicing and implementing e-invoicing, strategies for success. So talking about the best way to build a successful e-invoicing project and implementation, the benefits of e-invoicing in general and doing everything, implementing the strategies we're kind of talking to, and then obviously we'll end with some Q&A at the end. So Alton, I don't know if you want to. Ed's done a great introduction of us, but I think it's just as important to also say that I've been with Avalara 8 years, helping tax technology, implementing tax technology and e-invoicing for businesses, and helping them along that journey. I've been in the tax space for a long time. I'm newer to the invoicing space, but I am supported by Alton, who is an e-invoicing veteran. So Alton, over to you.
Thanks, Matt, and yeah, good afternoon, everybody. Yes, as Matt said, I come from an outsourcing background actually, and predominantly working for the last sort of 10 to 12 years in outsourcing of invoice automation processes, ranging from AP all the way through to AR processes, and in recent years very much aligning to the new e-invoicing mandates that have been prevalent across our industry. Thank you, Matt.
Awesome. So just to give you a brief overview of Avalara. We are one of the largest tax technology companies in the world. Recently celebrated our 20th birthday. So we were born out of the US, helping businesses solve the complexity that is North America. And since our formation in 2004, we've grown kind of exponentially across the globe, from a product and solution perspective, and also from kind of an office and employee perspective. So we've grown into many different regions, and we support largely a lot of regions across the world for many different types of customers. And you can see there on the left-hand side that the sort of volumes that we're doing and helping businesses with. Now, one of the key success criteria for us is working with our partner ecosystem. So our partner ecosystem underpins everything we do, and they're incredibly important for our success. So we kind of split our partners into three, which is systems integrators, accounting partners, and technology partners. And what they do is they kind of help us implement the solutions, connect to the solutions, allowing for businesses to easily adopt our solutions into their existing technologies. So it's truly trying to create a more simplified experience when using our products. So the way our product landscape looks is we are trying to support businesses from an end-to-end indirect tax journey. So the orange products there are our core products, and these are the products we see businesses using on a regular day-to-day basis, interacting with their ERP, their billing systems, the supporting products, and underpin those products and allow those products to work with extra levels of detail, and enables businesses from a cross-border perspective and other types of licenses and registrations and stuff like that. From an integrations perspective, we connect to many different types of integration. So it's not just ERP and accounting. There are many different ways businesses have to connect to us to do calculation, to do e-invoicing, and to do reporting and remittance as well. So being able to connect to all those platforms allows us to not only work with kind of committed transactions, but also work with any sort of other transactions they need to have assistance on. And then lastly, obviously, our professional services. So we have a range of partners, but also resources in-house to help businesses along a successful implementation journey. The one thing we wanted to just mention, obviously, we have recently been named as one of the leaders in the e-invoicing space by the IDC. This is incredibly great for us because we are obviously new on the e-invoicing journey compared to a lot of the businesses in the market. We are obviously changing the way that e-invoicing is viewed and how we solution it for our customers. So it's great to see us already becoming a leader in this market. So Alton, I'm going to hand over to you for taking us through the market dynamics and business challenges.
That's great. Thank you, Matt. So now, just as Matt said, to go over the market dynamics and today the challenges that you as business leaders are facing. I'd like to start off with a quote, actually. So in 2022, the OECD, that's the International Academy for Tax and Financial Crime Investigation, they stated that tax evasion, fraud, corruption, money laundering, and other financial crimes threaten the strategic, political, and economic interests of all countries. If we put that into context of the value that tax revenues deliver, according to a 2024 Valentis report on global e-invoicing and tax compliance, 34% of a country's overall tax revenue comes from VAT and sales tax collectively. Therefore, there is really no surprise that governments around the world are looking at how current processes involving VAT and sales tax can be improved. From some information in the latest data gathered by the European Union, this reveals a tax gap that ranges from between 20 to 30% of public revenue, or if we put that into monetary terms, that's around 60 billion euros worth of missing revenue. This number, of course, can be addressed and significantly addressed through the introduction of tax compliance schemes. An example of this has been in the past. So if we take Italy, Italy was an early adopter of e-invoicing within the European Union. And over the time that they have been running this since 2017, Italy has seen an annual increase in its tax revenues amounting to approximately 6 billion euros. Similarly, positive outcomes have been observed in the Latin American countries. They've been doing e-invoicing and reporting for a lot longer, 10, maybe 15 years. Brazil has experienced a noteworthy 58 billion US dollar increase in tax revenue by addressing the gaps in the invoicing and reporting. while Chile and Mexico have successfully reduced their VAT gap by up to 50%. The good news of all of these things, and the good news for any country embarking on a e-invoicing strategy now, is the leverage of the valuable insights and experiences from these trailblazing nations. This enables these countries to strategize from a more comprehensive top-down approach, which involves engaging earlier and collaborating earlier with the public and private sectors to create a situation that is time effectively for implementing and making it easier to actually come to life. If we add to this, in December of 2022, the European Commission published its view of VAT in a digital age, or VIDA for short. And this is really created to amend and update the European Union's VAT system to respond to the challenges of the VAT gap and digitization. VIDA demands mandatory intra-community electronic invoices and business-to-business digital reporting. This will require businesses without any thresholds or exemptions to exchange intra-community invoices electronically by 2030, and in parallel fulfill the requirements for the tax reporting. The Commission predicts that within a 10-year period, this will generate an additional, well, not additional, this will capture or fill the gap of 111 billion euros and save businesses around 41 billion euros in efficiencies over that period. So this is already beginning, and the Commission it plans to have all of these in place and running by 2030. And as I said, this has already begun. So governments in many countries have started to do this, and they've started this in lots of different ways. So some countries have gone in with a much softer approach, just requesting for digital reporting of the tax obligations, whereas others have gone in with a much harder approach, where e-invoicing models and tax authorities are actually directly involved in the billing process. As each country dictates its own rules, the overall e-invoicing and digital reporting landscape is complex. However, the trend towards invoicing and tax reporting is inevitable. So what about the United Kingdom? I can virtually hear you all saying. Sorry, Matt.
So what I was going to say is, so Alton, I think it's important to point out, we've already had a question, what is e-invoicing? We are going to cover that in 2 slides time. But I think I just wanted to make the distinction for everyone that this mandate in 2030 that's being introduced is for cross-border. As Alton mentioned, each country is then introducing their own domestic mandates as well, because they understand there's also issues with tax collection and business efficiencies that can be gained from that domestic side. So what's happening is you have businesses that are having to have multiple different formats with multiple different countries. So it's becoming incredibly complex for businesses because no e-invoicing mandates are treated or developed the same. So the complexity is massively there. So understanding e-invoicing is incredibly important, because it's going to affect every single business that's in the EU over the next sort of 5 years.
Thank you, Matt. And then that takes me very nicely onto the next point is here, you know, even within the UK. So on the 23rd of September, the Chancellor, Right Honourable Rachel Reeves, announced that HMRC Revenues and Customs will launch a consultation on e-invoicing, and that is predominantly to promote its wider use across UK businesses and government departments. Why they're doing this? HMRC states the reason for this is to introduce e-invoicing can significantly reduce administrative tasks. It can improve cash flow, boost productivity, and introduce automation and replace and reduce errors in tax returns, all helping to close that tax gap. And the consultation will gather input from businesses on how HMRC can support investment and encourage e-invoicing uptake. So even as we showed on the previous slide, the European Union's view, this is a view from the UK as well. So it's globally moving towards an e-invoicing presence across everywhere for invoicing because of the value it brings. So in answer to the question, what is an e-invoice? And it's a great question. If I put it basically, not all invoices are created equally. So what you have is, we have our traditional printed invoice, which is sort of a little bit old school now, but you know, changes to systems and services, but it's a labor intensive process dealing with paper-based invoices. It can, you know, they can slow payments down. They're not particularly traceable. It's quite difficult to trace them. There's a lot of manual process around, especially the AP part. When an invoice comes in and it's paper, we've got to key in the data, or we've got to run some sort of and then put it into the different system. And of course, they're not particularly environmentally friendly, having to print something on a piece of paper, stick it in an envelope, post it, etc. So that's evolved into a PDF invoice, which predominantly is the vast majority of most invoicing today, is done via PDF and email. And this really is that first step towards digitization. It's quite cost effective and it's easy to set up. However, it's quite prone to fraud and cyber attacks. There's low traceability. Things can get caught in spam folders and get held up. And again, there's still a lot of manual process around it. We now evolve onto what an e-invoice is. An e-invoice itself is actually, it's data. I mean, it's basically system created and transmitted and received in a structured format. This offers a definitive solution to the challenges, and basically it creates efficiencies, because you're not having to rekey in data. You're not having to re-input information. There's no human errors in keying from one system to another. The files are completely encrypted when they're sent, so it protects against cyber criminals, and that is highly visible today with both PDF and paper-based invoices. So the main differences are, it's structured, it's data, and it's transmitted in a structured manner over a structured network in a format that's that contains all the data required for that invoice. Matt, I don't know if you want to add anything into that particular area as well.
No, I think that I think it's more about understanding that technologies like OCR and machine reading invoices is no longer going to be needed when there's the introduction of e-invoicing, because you are truly getting that 100% compliant data through to the tax office and through to your buyers and suppliers. So that's where the efficiency comes from, not having to do loads of manual checks on invoice data. That's what I wanted to add, really.
Brilliant, thank you, Matt. So what happens if for some reason you're not compliant, and you know, what are the risks of this non-compliance when a mandate kicks in? As you can see from the slide, you know, each country has its own penalties, and these range from a fee per invoice in some regions all the way up to 100% of the invoice tax amount. So preparing your systems for invoicing ahead of time is hugely advisable. Governments levy fines, and penalties to enforce the adoption of the invoicing and reporting. And they often target the issuer of the invoice. And in some instances, they also will target the receiver of the invoice for receiving or accepting an invoice that isn't an invoice in a mandatory environment. So engaging a global provider can offer a safeguard against these unnecessary penalties and audits, and they can protect you as you move forward in multiple countries. So we're now ready for our first piece of more interaction with this audience today. Is we have a question for you, and the question is, how prepared are you for e-invoicing mandates? Are you fully prepared and have implemented a global solution already? Are you actively investigating global e-invoicing solution? Do you work with a local e-invoicing solution supplier and already have this implemented? Are you unaware of any of the requirements and therefore no preparations have been made? Or do you believe that you are not affected by e-invoicing today? I'll give you a minute or a few seconds to put your answer into the poll.
So Alton, thank you for taking us through all of that. What do you see currently as the biggest challenges businesses face being prepared for e-invoicing mandates?
I see the biggest challenge today being trying to keep abreast of all of the changes and amendments that are going on in the market. The market it's so fluid at the moment with what's happening around the mandates. Even the mandates that are in existence are changing regularly as well. And being able to be compliant is one thing, but remaining compliant is a separate issue as well. And what I see as the biggest challenge is the companies understanding that and having that data available to them to make an informed decision, whether that be to partner with a global provider or whether to partner with a local provider, is having that data and how that affects them as a business. That I think that's their biggest challenge that I see. And I think we may have the poll results in, Matt. I can see that we have a 0 score for people saying that they are fully prepared. So that kind of dovetails into what I was saying just then, where I think the biggest challenge is. So I'm glad I'm sort of on point with that answer. The second largest area was unaware of the requirements and therefore preparations haven't been done, which also kind of dovetails into what I was saying around how businesses are struggling to understand what the requirements are upon them, actually. And that was closely followed by not affected by invoicing yet. So it's an interesting set of answers there.
Yeah, and I think that's kind of fair. We've seen a lot of sort of the bigger economies. Obviously, Italy is one of the bigger ones, but that's introduced. But Spain, France, Germany are still to introduce their mandates. So it's probably quite fair that some of the larger businesses might not have been affected just yet.
Yeah. No, interesting answers. So if we move on. So really, as we've just said, I think the biggest challenges that the businesses are currently facing, there's plenty. However, for simplicity's purposes, we have bucketed them or grouped them into 3 main categories. Those are the research and compliance area. And as I said, many businesses, they're feeling lost. They're not familiar with the requirements and the future developments. And really, that's not surprising. From a recent Valentis report, they reported that there's last year, I think it was over 1,000 new legal requirements that were created within this space. So it's not surprising that businesses struggle to keep on top of this ever-changing landscape. You know, it's not a surprise there. I think from an operational and process perspective, businesses historically, through no fault of their own, they've adopted a very much sticking plaster approach to e-invoicing. So as a mandate has come in that has affected them, they've applied a local supplier to deliver that service, which works. However, as we can see globally now, e-invoicing expanding and growing, that creates a problem in itself, because applying multiple local suppliers eventually will cause problems with multiple procurement processes, multiple IT projects to be set up and get up and running, multiple issues around scaling and no singular visibility from a single point of contact. So there's missed opportunities also as well with having a single supplier around economies of scale. When you have multiple small suppliers, it's impossible to aggregate that volume to get an economy of scale benefit. So and that of course has issues on scalability. So you know, it's that's one of the operational process issues that a lot of, or challenges that companies face. And finally, and not last, but you know, probably one of the biggest areas is the financial and the risk challenge. You know, today businesses, they require a comprehensive solution that can interact with their ERPs, and that will provide them the security against fraud, give them audit trails, and support the inevitable change management that needs to occur as the businesses move from traditional to a e-invoicing process. So what to do? Of course, you know, businesses have a number of options. Of course, you could do nothing, not particularly advisable, as you know, ignoring legal regulations can lead to audits, penalties, and ultimately the inability to trade in some cases. Audits are expensive, time-consuming, penalties are a financial burden, and if you can't issue or receive an invoice, well, this impacts your ability to trade as a business. So probably not the best option. Of course, businesses can create their own solution, could proactively approach this and develop an in-house e-invoicing solution, leveraging IT and legal tax expertise within your own business. This does require, however, a substantial amount of effort on both those parts. And furthermore, as we've discussed, the e-invoicing landscape is ever changing. So staying on top of it and being able to keep compliant is a struggle, and can quickly become a real effort for a company. Could use lots of multiple local service providers, and I think I've already covered this in why they do a great job individual country, but scalability, economies of scale, complexity, multiple implementation phases, if it's not advisable for a company trading in multiple regions to apply multiple providers. So then alternatively, you know, we could be looking at a global multi-country provider. These providers have the capability to streamline your e-invoicing and live reporting processes while leveraging the provider's resources and technology around staying compliant within those mandates and updating the systems in order to support that and support your growth and expansion into new regions and new mandates as they come on board. So that leads us nicely into our second question.
so Alton, before we go to that second question,
Yeah.
I think it's a really, really good question from Samantha on the chat. That I think it was probably good to go back to the challenges piece. So the question was, I think there might be an answer. Will e-invoicing impact customers' invoicing and supplier invoices? And is it going to impact invoices sent within the country? And does it also include foreign invoices? And so the answer to that question is always, it depends. Each mandate is different. Some are domestic only, some are foreign as well. Some affect only domestic businesses, some affect foreign businesses as well. So that's why it's really, really important to understand the mandate, look at the mandate, and assess that. And as far as impacting the sales and invoicing process, yes, it's going to impact your potential way of you're going to be sending and receiving invoices with your customers. In certain instances like Poland and Italy, you will be retrieving your invoices and sending your invoices via the government. So there's definitely an impact to sending and receiving, but again, it all depends on the legislation introduced within that country. So that is the challenge as well. Another a big challenge of having to change current processes to meet each country's mandates.
Thank you, Matt. And great question.
Yeah, great question.
Yeah. And now to my great question. So as businesses, what do you see as your biggest challenge? Is it the compliance part? Is it optimizing your operational processes, or is it avoiding financial and operational risk that is out in the market today? Well, the poll question should be up, so we'll give that a minute to gather everybody's thoughts, and I'll ask you this time, Matt. What do you think, Matt? What do you think is the biggest challenge that businesses face? Oh, you're on mute, Matt. It was bound to happen during a webinar.
So yeah, look, to me, the biggest challenge is because this is brand new. I believe the research and application piece is the most difficult part. Understanding each of the mandates can be difficult, so finding the right partner to support you on that is really, really important. And then applying that. So it's common practice for people to think that data is readily available in the required format for the tax authorities. And so I think that one of the biggest challenges that we see is that businesses want to start the process, but once they actually get a little bit deeper into the weeds, they understand that they need to do a lot of data cleanup exercises before they can actually be compliant with the mandate. So the biggest challenge I see is understanding the mandates and then actually the application within their source systems and cleaning up that data.
Great. And I mean, Matt, your view has dovetailed beautifully with the view from our audience today. So compliance and research is topping the board there at 46%. Of concerns, closely followed by optimizing the operational processes for success, and that's running it at 35%. So yes, I think it dovetails very nicely into there. So I would like to now pass over to Matt, who's going to talk you through the strategies that can be applied for success with e-invoicing.
Yeah, and I was just about to say, I think that we're going to transition. So as businesses get to understand e-invoicing more, they get to have internal teams, the research part will become less of an issue because there's technologies already being developed to help businesses understand the different mandates. I think it's then going to switch to the second one, and helping the operational side is going to become the more bigger challenge for businesses. Okay, let's talk about the strategies for success. So the first thing before doing anything that we're talking about is getting the right team together. So because you're touching the invoicing process, it touches more departments than any other tax technology that we see. You've got to think about the AR teams, the AP teams, the tax technology teams, the tax teams, any finance leaders, the IT teams. It has to be that cohesive unit that looks at this project together. So that's the first thing that needs to be done. And then obviously when you're looking for that solution, is if you are multi-region, look for something that's going to be global, because you want to be able to understand that they can support you in multiple regions, but also that you can future-proof it for other mandates that will be coming online. And this allows for that scalability. So this allows you to not have to worry about having an individual project every time you go a mandate pops up. So if you think about the what happens in a procurement process, you have to procure a solution, you go through that whole cycle of looking at solutions in the market. If you already develop and obtain a global solution, it allows that scalable option to just add on additional countries as they come on board for you. The next one is if you can just click the next one, Alton, remembering the order. The integration. So again, having a single integration or as less integrations as possible is obviously going to be beneficial for your IT team and maintaining those. It's also going to allow everyone to have consistent experience on using the same tools, understanding and training people on the same tools. So having a single integration or as less integrations as possible is the most important thing. But also when you're setting up that integration, is there an integration that already exists that allows you to pre-configure things and make that implementation a little bit smoother for you? Because if you're recreating something every single time, it's obviously going to be quite costly. It's going to be quite time consuming. So yes, let's go on to the next one.
Just going to say on that point, Matt, just that you make a really interesting point there, and what we've seen in conversations with multiple customers is a lot of businesses that they want to minimize the exposure of their data. So having multiple connections to multiple solutions is exposing their data out many times, and what they don't want to do is do that, basically. So I just thought I'd reiterate that you made that point really well, but it's a really important point to a lot of businesses about how they want that integration to be tight because of the exposure of data and the risk that brings with fraud, cyber criminals, etc.
Yeah, absolutely. And obviously you just talked about from an implementation perspective, so having that global product that is scalable and it integrates to your platform allows for a much smoother implementation. And what we're seeing a transition from in the market is originally there was a lot of project-based solutions out there. So you'd have to do an individual product for each individual country, even with a single provider sometimes. What we're seeing a transition towards is businesses having one implementation and then just building on top of that existing implementation. So just basically building additional storage to the house. And this allows for them to not have to do multiple connection points, and it speeds up that implementation cycle, because the majority of the fields that tax officers are after, as you can imagine, 70 to 80% of those are very similar, what they're looking for from region to from country to country and from region to region. So when you've got a lot of stuff already pre-configured, it allows for speed of implementation and allows you to not have to rely on loads of internal and external resource to implement that solution. And obviously the last thing is hosting and security, and your IT team are going to be the ones most looking at this. Again, Alton kind of touched on it there. the more connection points you have, the more security risk you have, the more maintenance and more assessment you have to have of individual solutions on a regular basis. So again, that comes down to cost and understanding where that is hosted. So some of the mandates have certain requirements where certain things have to be hosted in different environments in different countries and from the archiving perspective as well. So understanding the solution and does it meet those mandated requirements from a hosting and security perspective is really important. So the next one is obviously network access. So Alton talks a lot about the benefits or the e-invoicing and Alton talks a lot about the challenges. One of the great benefits from e-invoicing is the cost saving of it. So if you have the ability to adopt to networks like Peppol and exchange invoices with your providers, even with your suppliers and buyers, even if there isn't a mandate there, it's going to improve business efficiency. So looking for a provider that can help you adopt for not just mandatory, but some voluntary stuff as well, allows you to kind of have that holistic journey of it might not be live in that country yet, but actually if you adopt it early, you're already benefiting from some of the efficiency savings that you might get. So monitoring. So does the solution you're looking at actually actively monitor the changes in e-invoicing? Because this is one, I think, the misconceptions with e-invoicing. A lot of people think, right, there's a solution, we get a solution, and that's the end of the journey. I think someone mentioned in the comments that the Saudi Arabia is on their 15th phase. I've seen many tax office proposals and presentations where just introducing e-invoicing is phase 1 of maybe like a 10-phase plan. So it's going to keep changing. The data requirements are going to keep changing. The format's going to keep changing. So there's some countries that are adopting a very simple method in the beginning to move to a complex method after they realize that every business is kind of got used to e-invoicing. So monitoring those changes is incredibly important to be successful in your strategy. Tax compliance. So e-invoicing intertwines incredibly tightly with tax compliance. So one of the key drivers behind this, yes, it's the VAT gap, but what tax offices have always really struggled to do is do real-time auditing, or at least auditing on a more real-time basis. The fact that they're now getting more data means that they're going to understand more about your business, they're going to understand more about your industry, and they're going to be able to understand who your suppliers and buyers are and understand how you're transacting with them. So they get to understand and are more easily are they able to kind of pick companies they want to audit on, because if your e-invoicing and your e-reporting doesn't match with your tax reporting, then you're going to get that knock on the door from the tax office with a potential full audit request.
And Matt, it leads me nicely onto a question we've had in the Q&A from Jonathan, and it's really around how will e-invoicing impact software publishers who receive license proceeds via an app marketplace like Google Play Store, where it's left to Google to invoice the end customer on their behalf?
So so there's a couple of things in there. So part of some of the VIDA proposal that Alton mentioned is some of the extra stuff that's outside of e-invoicing is to do with that platform and gig economies and looking at how those are supported. It remains to be seen how that's going to be supported in the EU, because from 2030, obviously, all of those cross-border transactions are going to need to be reported. And I think it's important to distinguish the difference between e-invoicing and e-reporting. So for a lot of B2G and B2B transactions, e-invoicing is generally the planned method. E-reporting is generally more of a traditional method, or sort of more of a new forward method for B2C transactions. There is some clearance mandates in LATAM and a few other places where for B2C transactions, the the supplier has to actually obtain a QR code or a digital signature or something from the tax office. So it's going to cause a lot of platforms like that a lot of change, and they're going to have to introduce e-invoicing into some of their policies. So what they might have to do is they may have to become merchant on record for certain transactions to make it easier for them to invoice. So it's going to bring about a lot of change, that mandate in 2030. I don't think we know now how it's going to play out because it still hasn't been accepted. That's why they pushed the day out to 2030. It was originally 2028, but they have not had agreement from all authorities to push forward with it. Right, let's go through the last couple here, Alton. So we've got accessibility. So making sure, I mean, I don't know if anyone's read an XML, but it's not the easiest thing to read. So making sure that if there's an ability to be able to read the invoice or production of the invoice, that is definitely a chance for you to be successful, because not everyone has the ability to read XML or the knowledge to read XML. So making sure that when you're looking at a successful provider, they can provide you that human readable PDF as well. And then lastly, support. Support, we've talked a lot about understanding the market, understanding conditions. Support from e-invoicing provider is going to be incredibly important. They need to be able to help you from a technology perspective and making sure you've got high uptime, because you want to be able to invoice on a regular basis. But also making sure they're supporting you on your journey with the new mandates, understanding the changes. So it's support is kind of multifaceted in that point. There's different areas. So there's the technical support, but there's also kind of understanding the changes that are happening in e-invoicing. And there is a report a more detailed report that explains all this that we're more than happy to kind of share with everyone afterwards. It generally helps businesses understand and build a good strategy for what they're looking for from an e-invoicing solution. And then this is the last slide to finish with some benefits. So I'll try and go. We've got a few minutes left, so I'll try and make sure we get through these. But the great part of global e-invoicing is that while there's a lot of change management that needs to be adopted, there's definitely a lot of benefits that you get from introducing e-invoicing. So obviously compliance is increased, because obviously where you're sharing the regular data, human error is often taken out of the equation. So you can kind of sleep more easily at night knowing that your data is flowing between you and your suppliers and buyers on a much more kind of compliant basis. Economies of scale. So when you're actually choosing a global provider, if you're choosing individual providers, you're often going to be paying more because obviously you get to have that global contract and allow for the economies of scale that a global provider is going to give you. Reducing the cybercrime and fraud. I think Alton touched on this earlier on. We're in a world now where there is increased cyber fraud all the time. We receive regular security training, much to many businesses, but we all are always going to be prone to this, because they're always this seems to be a growing area for criminals in the market. And so obviously making sure that you're not receiving PDFs from random places that the AP team start paying is incredibly important. So that's why e-invoicing is a great benefit for that, because you can trust every invoice that is coming through. Scalability. So when you're actually adopting a global provider, scalability is one of the most important things, because you want someone that once you've picked that solution, you're able to kind of continually develop on that solution, not have to use other providers to meet your requirements. Efficiency is one of the biggest gains. We'll talk about this on the next slide, but efficiency in both AR and AP invoices. There's been recent reports released by the European Commission, released by Valentis, to show that the value that introducing e-invoicing does from an efficiency perspective. It allows that you save, I think, over €5 on your AR and AP invoices per invoice. So if you're invoicing high volumes, obviously it can the value it brings to you and your business can be incredibly increased over a period of time. And obviously predictable IT process, making sure that you're not having multiple different suppliers and connections. It's going to allow your IT team to be happy and not have to be maintaining and managing loads of different processes. So this is our last slide. So obviously we're telling you the benefits, but we wanted to make sure that you understood that there's many third parties that are also speaking so highly of the benefits of e-invoicing. So you can see there from PwC that there's a 70% saving compared with paper billing, which is, it seems unrealistic, but it's an incredible saving of 70%. When you're actually implementing a solution, the ROI is the 6 to 18 months, Belendis believe. So that's a quick ROI on something that you are technically being kind of forced to do business within a region. So it's great to see that there is, although it's a lot of change management in the beginning, there is obviously that great ROI for businesses. We talked about this previously on the previous slide about error reduction. The errors are one of the key reasons why this is being adopted on a voluntary basis. Taking that human interaction away, it's a laborious exercise keying in information, so why not take that away? No one wants to be keying in information. They want to focus on value-added exercises. So taking this away obviously reduces that human error on a day-to-day basis. And obviously I mentioned it previously on the previous slide, like the New Zealand authorities has said that obviously there's a lot of fake invoices that come in or compromised invoices, which creates a higher security risk, whereas you don't have that with e-invoicing because you're either on a network where you've already shared your details and you're comfortable doing that, or you're interacting with government authorities. So that high level security is great for all businesses. So there's not too many downsides to e-invoicing. And we've got one last slide as the summary.
Yeah.
I know we've answered a few questions, so we'll probably be able to take just a couple of questions at the end. But obviously, we just wanted 4 points to just take away. Obviously, this is being introduced because they're trying to reduce the tax gap and trying to understand businesses in a bit more detail and be able to audit them better. So the key takeaway is that this probably won't disappear. Tax authorities are going to push forward because there's a vested interest for them. Mandates, keep abreast of mandates, understand how they're going to affect you, work with the right partners to understand those mandates, and make sure you give yourself an appropriate amount of time to see how that will affect your business and affect your source systems. Efficiency, don't ignore the efficiency gains you're going to get from this. So the quicker you adopt the e-invoicing, it could be the greater efficiency gains and the quicker you get to your ROI. So make sure that you're looking at both mandated and voluntary invoicing as a potential options if you feel like you want to benefit from ROI quicker. And lastly, the partnership. Make sure you're choosing the right partner for whether you're trying to understand the mandates, whether you're trying to look for an implementation partner, whether you're looking for a solution. Take your time, understand what's the best fit for you and your business, and obviously then look to move forward with those solutions. So I would always say my one key thing is be proactive with this. Don't be reactive. We see too many businesses be reactive, leave it to the last minute, and then they're scrambling around trying to find different providers to help them with different things. So if you're proactive and understand everything, then obviously it allows you to be prepared, and you can obviously then act when you want to act. Okay.
Thank you.
Thanks, guys, for that. Alton, Matt, that was great, really informative. And thank you for answering most of the questions as we went through. It makes my life much easier now. There is one still to be answered, which you did touch on in your last few slides, but maybe you could talk about it in a little bit more detail. The question is from Sebastian, and he's asked, what is the level of agility required for the solution selected to adapt to changes in regulations?
So the changes, I mean, let's talk about the changes. So the typical changes we see are introductions of new processes. So I mean, we recently got a look at the Belgian tax office's idea, or what they want to do to introduce. So they're going to start with PEPL, and then what they're going to do is they're going to potentially then move to a methodology where they're going to introduce other types of e-reporting as well, and other ways to interact with the government. So they may do some pre-clearance and stuff like that. So what we're seeing as far as the change are concerned, the changes I think fit into 3 buckets. It's changes to the existing mandate construct. There's additional data fields that are required in different countries, and then there's just changes to the existing formats and stuff that are required. Some require the ability for the customer or the business to adapt and change, but the majority are for the software provider to change the way that they consume data or send back data. I don't know if you want to add anything, Alton.
No, I think you've covered that pretty well, to be honest with you, Matt.
Great, thank you. And another one's just come in from Amrita. E-invoices are stored electronically, but in some countries they also store physically the invoices. In this situation, what happens? Are the invoices printed and stored, or?
I can probably take part of this, Matt, and maybe you can top it off. So yeah, where there's an e-invoicing mandate in play and the mandate requires archiving as part of that, whether that be a digitally signed archive or a stamped archive, that is a digital file. And what tends to happen there is you tend to archive 2 main elements. You would archive the XML, which is the file format that is exported, but you would also archive a PDF version of that as well, which is a human readable version. So that tends to be the predominant factor when it comes to archiving. But and Matt, I don't know if you want to add to that with anything else.
No, I think you're the e-invoicing archiving specialist, I think, given your experience.
Yeah, and the thing with archiving as well is it differs. It does differ from, like we've been saying, it's quite complex. It differs from country to country, and some countries require you to archive for 10 years. Some require you to archive for 5 years. So it really is down to the mandate. So when you're looking at an e-invoicing partner, look at how they operate with the mandates, look at how they offer the services around archiving. Is archiving an additional cost to your business, and is your service provider going to charge you an additional archiving cost, or is that archiving cost built into the cost of the service already provided by that service provider? So it can be quite complicated, but understanding the individual elements is key, because that'll give you a real good understanding of your total cost of ownership when you move forwards as well.
Perfect, thank you. And just very quickly, one last question from Grace about Avalara. Does Avalara work with clients to complete tax registrations and filings with them, with or without the e-invoicing solution? Grace said they're looking to work with Stripe, who they think will do the e-invoicing for them. But
so the answer is yes. The answer is yes. So on the original slide, we do a range of different tax compliance services from end to end. So we can do registrations, returns, reporting, e-invoicing, calculation. So all of those. So yes, we can support.
Perfect. Well, thank you very much again. So that brings us to the end of today's webinar. So thanks, Matt and Alton, for your insight and advice. And also thank you to the listeners for your time and for loads of excellent questions throughout the webinar. I hope you've all found the session useful. A short feedback survey will pop up on your screen after the webinar finishes. Please do complete this, as your feedback is very important to us and helps us to shape future events. The webinar has been recorded, and we will send you a link to the on-demand recording tomorrow. So thanks again and goodbye.
Thank you, everybody.
Thanks, everyone.